from this material entanglement. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnanam-jana-shalakaya Chakshuram-militam yena Tasmai Shri-Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya-manobhishtam Sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam-rupa-kadamayam Tadati swapadam kisham Namah Vishnu-padaya Krishna-prashtaya bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavari Pastyatya Dejatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanshakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhayeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So, thank you for listening to me try and speak a few words about this verse. Thank you to the deities for giving me this chance. So, looking at this verse, the first thing I thought is, what is this hell? Because there are three gates leading to this hell. But what hell? It's a very archaic idea of hell portrayed in lots of paintings in Christian artwork of fire and brimstone and things. Is it talking about that hell that we talk about, the hellish planets? Or is it talking about a different kind of hell? And in the previous verses this is described. It says, those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Attaining repeated birth and death amongst the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. So this hell, which is being talked about, is not just the kind of idea of fire and brimstone burning in hell, although we know there are hellish planets which are very hellish. But the whole material existence, Krishna is saying in the 8th chapter, Brahma Bhuvana Lokapana Avatinojana, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery. And they're constituting these threefold miseries: Adhyatmaka Klesha, Adhibhautika Klesha and Adhidhaivaka Klesha. Miseries from the body, miseries from others, and miseries from environmental factors. And this is all wrapped up in a neat package of birth, death, old age and disease. This is pretty hellish. And the key to this is the killing of the self, like Prabhupada says in the purport. It can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement. So we need to ask ourselves some very simple questions. And since we're all sat here, we have already asked ourselves these questions, so we know the answer. Do we want to be perpetually cast into nescience? Do we?
I don't think so.
No. Do we want to overcome lust, anger and greed?
That would help, certainly.
There's a saying which is often misquoted, which people they say ignorance is bliss, but it's not. The original quote is actually, if ignorance is bliss, then 'tis folly to be wise. Where ignorance is bliss. But ignorance is not bliss in this world. I forget who it was, there's a quote somebody said, if ignorance is bliss, then why aren't more people jumping for joy? These people in ignorance, they're not jumping for joy, because it's not bliss. And one of the biggest problems for getting through this ignorance are these three gates: lust, anger, and greed. And of the three, I'm going to focus a bit more on lust today, because of the three, lust is kind of the first one. Anger and greed are also very difficult, very big problems in all our lives. If we think we don't have any anger, and we don't have any greed, or we don't have any lust, then really we're a bit in illusion. Somebody once said, one devotee said to Prabhupada, I don't have any lust in my heart. Prabhupada said, go see a psychiatrist. So we'll start with lust. I'm not going to talk so much about anger and greed, maybe if we've got time, because lust is really the catalyst. So where does lust come from? I've been reading in the third canto where lust comes from. Lust and desire became manifested from the heart of Brahma, anger from between his eyebrows, greed from between his lips. Prabhupada says in the purport, a conditioned soul is under the influence of mental speculation. However great one may be in the estimation of mundane education and learning, he cannot be free from the influence of psychic activities. Therefore it is very difficult to give up lust and the desires for low activities until one is in the line of devotional service. So there's the solution. We come back around to that devotional service is and Krishna consciousness is the panacea, the cure all for all these problems. So this is saying that lust is coming from Brahma in the beginning of his creative activities. But it's also said, Prabhupada says in the purport, that lust is born of contact with the mode of passion. And Krishna says in the third chapter, Kama esha krodha esha rajaguna samudbhava mahasano mahapampa papma vidyenam iha varinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So Krishna is really giving a hint that lust is a big problem of the root cause. Actually, it's said elsewhere, lust is the root cause of all suffering, of all demoniac qualities. Burijan Prabhu says in his book, As They Surrender Unto Me, when karma is unsatisfied, when lust is unsatisfied, krodha, anger, is born. But even if anger is gratified, then we are still not satisfied, but we are filled with lobha, or greed. Lobha gives birth to moha, illusion, which causes loss of discrimination. Then mada, intoxication of pride, comes. Then matsara, envy, fully manifests. Thus, all demoniac qualities stem from lust. So, if we can deal with lust, then we're on a pretty heading in a pretty good direction to conquering over the other problems, the other anarthas, anger and greed, and of course illusion, pride, and envy. In the second chapter, Krishna is also saying a very similar thing. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. So lust is really the root. We're going to go to the root of lust. Like Prabhupada said, if you can remain celibate, you can remain chaste, not necessarily single, but chaste, then you're already 50% liberated. You have to understand, talking about lust and dealing with lust, that there's a big difference between Griha-Medi life and Grihastha life. And this is predominantly about Griha-Medis, which is predominantly what people out there are living like. Very few, next to no, good Grihasthas outside of Krishna consciousness. because as will become apparent, Krishna consciousness is really necessary to lead this pure life, to stay aloof from the effects of lust. Because it really is a big problem. Like it says in the Raja Niti, which is instructions for Kshatriyas on diplomacy, there are different ways to deal with enemies. You can deal with them, deal words, gifts, a position, or punishment. And Baladev Vijayabhusan comments in his commentary to the Gita that lust is Maha Papam, it's the greatest enemy, and the only way of dealing with it is punishment. This sounds pretty harsh. We'll see what we can come up with. I have to admit that this lecture is not really my lecture. It's completely plagiarized from another lecture by His Grace Gopal Prabhu. I hope he doesn't mind me borrowing some of his material. It's very relevant for dealing with lust. I think hopefully a few words will help us a little bit, give us something to think about. So we've all seen that iconic image of a heart with an arrow through it, yeah, and there's a bit of blood dripping out, a pierced heart, and this arrow is Madan's arrow, Cupid, and Cupid makes us stupid. It's like the quote says, lust is like an hourglass, with the head getting empty and the heart getting full. It's an hourglass, head gets empty because you take leave of your senses. And this lecture is, I definitely recommend listening to it. It's much better than any talk that I can give. We have the MP3s, we can arrange obstacles on the path of devotional service seminar by Gaur Gopal. Covers all the different anarthas, covers lust, anger, greed, pride, envy and illusion. And in each one he gives a very beautiful method of dealing with each anartha, and by that anartha, as each word is an acronym for the solution. So lust is an acronym for L for love, U for understanding, S for shelter, and T for tolerance. So I'll go through a little bit about what he says on these topics. So cultivating love for the Lord, love for the Lord's devotees, is the best way to one of the solutions to dealing with lust, because we have to understand what is lust. We looked at where it comes from, and what it originally is, because everything's coming from Krishna. Krishna is absolute, and lust must also be coming from him. But it's not so simple as that. Lust is the perverted reflection of love. Like everything in the material world is a reflection of what's in the spiritual world. And just like when the sun shines, if you face the sun, then there is no darkness, you're in light. But it's only when you turn your back on the sun do you then cast a shadow in front of you, and you live in the shadow. Prabhupada gives this example, it's very nice. So, why are we attracted to the beauty of this world? Because we're not sufficiently attracted to the beauty of Krishna. Why are we affected by lust? Because we are not sufficiently overwhelmed by love for the Lord. So developing love for the Lord is really what we're trying to do here. And we've got so many processes, like I mentioned, the devotional service is the process. We've got so many methods. We've got so many, and as we'll see in a minute, about there are actually shelters, the holy name, the deities, association, service. They're all shelters. And like to get attracted to things, and the karmis, they know. They're very good at advertising with billboards and adverts, and it's all very flashy and jazzy, and senses, like those glasses that Devotional Prabhu has, they just fall out on stalks for something. and we want to go there or buy this or do that or do this. So we fight back. We dress the deities very flashily and very jazzily. We have very flashy and jazzy kirtans and attract ourselves in this way. So we have the same, you see, give them a dose of their own medicine. But it's spiritualized, used in Krishna's service. And we dress the deities very flashily and jazzily, and we have very flashy and jazzy kirtans. And like Devotional Prabhu was saying the other day, we think that we're doing all this for going attire, or nice dresses that don't go in attire, nice kirtans that go in attire, but really their mercy, they're doing it for us. They're allowing us to serve them like this so that we can become attracted to them. Because they don't really need our kirtans, they don't really need our little bit of cotton and a few pearls and Claire's accessories. but they allow us for our benefit. Of course they do accept it, they accept devotion. And the deities really are a very big shelter. I'm kind of jumping ahead here to shelter, but it's the part of developing love for the Lord is to take shelter, and the deities are a great shelter. And Lord Kapila Dev gives a method for meditating on the deity form of the Lord. It's in the third canto. It's very highly recommended. Very beautiful section. Gives talks about meditating on each different limb of the Lord, starting with his lotus feet and coming up. And he talks about meditation on the eyebrows of the Lord as being the cure for lust. It says the arched eyebrows of the Lord, I'm sure you all heard this, the arched eyebrows are like bows, the bow and arrow. And the merciful glances that the deities cast upon us are like arrows. And these arrows can conquer this arrow of Madan, of Cupid. Cupid's arrows aren't as powerful as Krishna's arrows. So this is something we can do, is to meditate on the eyebrows of the Lord, get attracted to the Lord by meditation on his form. But what Gopal is talking about in this lecture, which I definitely agree with, is more than attraction to the Lord, is getting attracted to devotees, because it's very easy to be attracted to the Lord, because he's very, 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 very attractive. We can go to the manor and we see Radha Gokulananda in all their glory and opulence, and it's very easy to be standing there and be attracted. But to get attracted to the Lord's devotees can be a little bit more difficult, because when we live with them day in, day out, we tend to see each other's faults and problems. So this is something we can be conscious of, because really we're all in the same boat. We're all young men here. How many times a day do we think something lusty or something negative about another devotee, something like this? 5 times a day?
Depends.
10 times?
Different days.
50 times? I don't know, but we're all in the same boat here. So we try and help each other out, try and give more appreciation to other devotees, more association, and we can all move forward like this and have very blissful life in association and relation with the Lord, Sri Krishna Bhagavan. Because we fall victim to lust. There's a verse in the 11th canto, which is quoted, where Krishna is saying that my devotees may not have all their senses under control, and that's fine, which is a big hope. Okay, great. But what's the problem is when they fall victim to those senses, to these uncontrolled senses. So it's okay that we're thinking these things, lusty thoughts or negative thoughts. It says, if as long as my devotee is trying to condense his love for me, then it's okay. And that's really what we want to be doing, is trying to condense our love and the love for the devotees. Because we fall victim to these uncontrolled senses, to lust, to anger, and to greed. When we're lonely, when we're neglected, and when we're frustrated, these three things, especially loneliness, is such a big, big problem in Krishna consciousness. And practically, I think we've all felt a bit lonely sometimes. We're engaged in service all the time. We find time to relate to each other and help each other out like that. We should, like they say, you can't make time, you can only spend it. So we have to try and spend some time wisely in helping each other. So the solution to loneliness is this good association. And the solution to neglect is appreciation. You can give appreciation. And the solution, when we're feeling frustrated, a very good solution is hearing about Krishna. Hearing the stories, the pastimes of Krishna, hearing the message of Krishna. Like when Krishna and Balaram were in Vrindavan with the cowherd boys, and all the cowherd boys were hungry because they hadn't had any breakfast. They asked Krishna and Balaram to get them some food. So they go to Krishna and Balaram, Bhagavan, they decide to liberate the wives of these yogya brahmanas who are performing big sacrifices. And they go to them and ask the brahmanas for some food. The brahmanas just shoo these boys away because they're not Vaishnavas. They may be brahmanas, but they're not Vaishnavas. It's an interesting point that brahmanas not necessarily Vaishnavas, but Vaishnavas are automatically brahmanas. So Krishna and Balaram go to the wives of these yogya brahmanas, and the wives of these brahmanas have never seen Krishna and Balaram. They've never been with Krishna and Balaram. They've only heard about Krishna and Balaram, and just by this hearing, immediately they drop everything, take everything they have, and rush to Krishna and Balaram and give them profusely everything. So this hearing is very, very powerful. Shravanam is a shelter. All these things you can take shelter of hearing and chanting and deities, association. So L for love, U for understanding. Very often when people fall victim to lust, they don't think it through. Because it's on the mental platform. The mind is a rascal, and you get some idea, and we don't think it through, that we don't use the intelligence, engage in intelligence. It blinds us so much, like the story of Sailana Mishra, his father had just died. He was supposed to perform the crematory rites for his father. But he was completely addicted to this prostitute, Cintamani, and all he can say is Cintamani, Cintamani. And he leaves, he just rushes out, and he's supposed to perform these crematory rites for his father, but he leaves. And not only that, there's a huge storm going on. He comes to the river is flooded, the bridge is out. He tries to get someone to take him across the river, and the boatman just says, "Are you crazy? We're going to drown." So he dives into the river himself, somehow finds a floating log to hold on to, and swims across the river. He comes out the other side, he gets to this prostitute's house, and he finds a rope, climbs up the rope and in through the window, and this Cintamani is completely amazed to see Sailana here. "How did you come here, Sailana? Such a storm, and I heard about your father. Did you perform the crematory rites?" He says, "No." And then she looks out the window and she sees that the log that he came across the river floating on was actually a dead body. She looks, and this rope that he climbed up is actually a snake. He is so blind that he didn't see anything. And he said, "How can I perform these crematory rites for my father when all I can think of is you?" But this Cintamani is completely disgusted with him. She thinks, get out, Ceylon, I can't believe you've done this, so deplorable thing. And then she says to him, if only you had so much attraction for Krishna as you do for this temporary body of mine, then you would be a great saint. And Srilanamishra, he took this as his Guru Dev speaking through this prostitute. These words, they really, like Cupid's arrow, they struck his heart and pierced his heart. He remembered this, and then he left that place then, and he went to Vrindavan. He later became known as Bilva Mangal Thakur, a great Vaishnava saint. So, this lust is completely blinding. To overcome this, to see in the dark, we need to sharpen our intelligence so it lights up around us so we can see where we're going. But even with the sharpest intelligence, it's still not going to be enough. Still not necessarily enough. It can help, not that we shouldn't do it. We should help, should do it, and it will help a great deal. But like Ajamil was such a learned Brahmana, he knew all the Vedas. So then when he sees some scene on the street, he fell down. He tried to remember all the shlokas, he knew all the things to help him, but as we know from that story, he fell down into a deplorable life. But then at the end of his life, he called out, Narayan, no. And he took shelter of the Lord, even unknowingly, but he got the shelter of the Lord. So the next L for love, U for understanding, S for shelter. So we take shelter of the Lord, and all these things that we have, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Sudhir Chandra Prabhu was saying very nicely the other day, is non-different from Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, the deities, the holy name, they're all shelters, so you can take shelter of these. And the association of devotees is a shelter. And prasad, take shelter of prasad. We've had practical experience even this morning. One time, Srila Prabhupada, I'm not sure if it was at Bhaktivedanta Mana, it could have been because they have lots of ducks and geese there. So there were a load of ducks wandering along, and the devotees were giving them some prasad or something. And Prabhupada, he said, which duck will get the most? And all the devotees were trying to think, which duck? We don't know, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada pointed to one of them and said, that duck will get the most. He said, why Prabhupada? How do you know that duck will get the most? Because he is quacking the loudest. So when lust attacks, we have to quack. Quack, quack. And as Devamrita Swami says, one of the best ways to quack, to call out to the Lord, to take shelter of the Lord, one of the best personalities to approach is Nityananda Prabhu. Because Nityananda Prabhu is so merciful, so easily approachable, and so drunk. He's so drunk in love of Godhead. It's like sometimes people have a drunk uncle, and you go to your uncle when he's sober and ask him for some money, and you won't get a penny out of him. But you go when he's drunk and you say, £200 only, uncle, for this party I'm going to tonight. And he's so drunk he says, pulls out his pocket, 500, why take 200? Here, take 500. Nityananda Prabhu is like this. He's so drunk in love of Godhead that you ask him, oh, please help me with lust. He says, why help with lust? I'll help with all anatas. In lust, anger, greed, no problem. So we can approach Nityananda. And Devamrita Swami says, like especially for book distributors, when you're on the street, if some David is coming and you may be getting a bit bewildered or something, then we can call out Nitai, Nitai, but with the lips closed and keep the mouth closed. Otherwise, people might think we're a bit strange. They already think we're quite strange because we're totally crackers if we do that. So with the lips closed, we can call out as loud as we can in our mind, Nitai, and Nityananda Prabhu is more than ready to help his devotees. Like Prabhupada once said that he was completely unaffected by Maya. Prabhupada said, actually, Maya can never touch me. And all the devotees were in awe. Wow, Prabhupada, no, Maya can't touch him. So pure. And then later on they saw Prabhupada in the temple and he was praying so fervently on his knees, eyes closed. And then afterwards one of the devotees asked Prabhupada, what were you praying for, Srila Prabhupada? And he said, I was praying that I may never be attacked by Maya. And then now the devotees are completely baffled. Prabhupada says he can't be touched by Maya, now he's praying he shouldn't be touched by Maya. And then Prabhupada said, it's because I pray like this every day that Maya doesn't attack me. So, taking shelter of the Lord, more than understanding, is very, very necessary for overcoming these anarthas, these gates to hell, lust, anger and greed. But then even if we think we have taken full shelter of the Lord and everything is going to be rosy and cozy, it sometimes turns out that even then we still fall victim. Like we could chant 192 rounds, think ourselves like Haridas Thakur, 192 rounds. Okay, now I'm free. But we go to bed, we wake up the next day, and then lust, it comes back. It's like an old friend that just keeps coming back. Can't get rid of it. So if we think we're free, this is the greatest danger. When we think we're free from these things, we're in trouble to think again. So Prabhupada said the only problem with lust is 3 words. I like it. I like it. And we've spoken to people on the street, they like being in ignorance. They think because they go by this aphorism that ignorance is bliss, that they're in illusion. This is the point, that it's an illusory bliss. So there's a very surreal story in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 9th canto, which I've been looking at, about 2 goats. It's the story of Maharaj Yayati, and his father was Nahusha. And this Nahusha, he molested Mother Sachi Devi, the wife of Indra. Very dangerous thing to do, is go messing about with Indra's wife. So this Nahusha, he got cursed to be a python, to be a snake. So his eldest son was called Yati, and this Yati could understand that if he became king, he became the emperor, then he will become blinded to self-realization. Because to be a ruler, one tends to forget about self-realization. So he takes sannyas and goes off. So it's left to the next son, Maharaj Yayati. Maharaj Yayati becomes Maharaj Yayati and becomes emperor. And he marries the daughter of Sukracharya, Devayani. And this is a pratiloma marriage. There's 2 types of marriage. Generally, Brahmanas marry Brahmanas and Kshatriyas marry Kshatriyas. But an anuloma marriage is allowed where a Brahmana marries the daughter of a Kshatriya. But a pratiloma marriage is generally not allowed where a Kshatriya marries the daughter of a Brahmana. And Devayani was a Brahmana's daughter, whereas Maharaj Yayati is a Kshatriya. So this marriage is quite unusual, and it took place because Devayani had a friend called Samishta, and they had many, many girlfriends, and they were wandering through the palace gardens and came upon a lake. They decided to bathe in this lake, so they took off their clothes and were enjoying Jala Krida, water pastimes, like Krishna and the gopis. They're splashing water all over themselves and each other. But then they see Lord Shiva coming along on his bull with Mother Parvati, and they immediately become very embarrassed because they're all naked. And they get out of the lake and put their clothes back on. And unknowingly, Samishta puts on Devayani's clothes. And Devayani furiously rebukes her, calling her a maidservant, an unclean maidservant, and is really having a go at her. And Prabhupada says in the purport that this is the nature of women. Even thousands of years ago, were very quick to strike even at their friends. But then Samishta, she has a real go at Devayani. She can't believe what she's saying, because she didn't know. She just, in the rush, she put her clothes on. And what she actually does, she actually keeps Devayani's clothes and throws naked Devayani down a well and goes on. So Devayani had a right enough of Samishta. And along comes Maharaj Yayati, who pulls Devayani out of the well and gives her his upper cloth to cover her. And then Devayani is completely enchanted by Maharaj Yayati and desires him as her husband. She'd actually been cursed that she wouldn't get a Brahman husband, so she can understand that this is providence, that Maharaj Yayati's come along and he's a Kshatriya, so they should get married. Well, with Maharaj Yayati, he's not so keen, because she's the daughter of a Brahmana marrying like cross-caste Pratilama like this. He's not so sure if this is going to be auspicious. But he thinks it's also providential, so he does this. And Devayani, she goes running to her father Sukracharya, who is actually the guru of Vrishabhava, Samishta's father. So Devayani tells Sukracharya about what Samishta did, throwing her down this well. And Sukracharya goes off to chastise Vrishabhava. Well, Vrishabhava he's aware of what's happened, so immediately he bows to his guru and he begs forgiveness. And he says, whatever will happen, whatever I can do, please make it happen to make amends. So Sukracharya asks what Devayani's desire is. Devayani says she wants to marry Maharaj Yayati, and she can, and then Samishta and all her girlfriends will go with her and be her maidservants. And they also marry Maharaj Yayati, as is the Vedic custom. So they go and they live for some time, and Devayani gives birth to 4 sons? 3 sons. 4 sons. Yadu is Maharaj Yadu dynasty. Kauravasa, I can't read that. Prahyu, Anu, and Anu. And when Sukracharya gives Samishta and all the maidservants and Devayani to Maharaj Yayati, he tells Yayati, he says, this Samishta is trouble. You must not, don't ever let her lie with you in your bed, or there will be big, big trouble. So Maharaj Yayati remembers this, because Sukracharya is very big acharya. He's got respect for him, he listens to this. But then Samishta, seeing that Devayani has these 4 sons, Yadu, Durvasu, Praya, and Anu, she really wants to have some children as well, to have some offspring. And she approaches Maharaj Yayati and begs him. And because Maharaj Yayati can see that this is a religious practice, that he should fulfill his wife's desire, he does. And Samishta gives birth to 3 sons, the youngest of which is called Puru. But then Devayani, finding out about Samishta's pregnancy, becomes unbelievably envious and leaves Maharaj Yayati, returns to Sukracharya and tells him what has happened. So Sukracharya and Marajati comes running after her because he's very attached to this Devyani, because Devyani is very, very expert at fulfilling his lusty desires. He's living a very luxurious, comfortable life of sense gratification. And when Sukracharya hears about what's happened, he curses Marajayati to become old. He gives him old age and invalidity. Marajayati is so upset because he's really quite enjoying this sense gratification. He thinks he's enjoying this sense gratification. And he begs Sukracharya, please do something. So Sukracharya gives him a way out. He says, you can have your youth back if you find someone who is willing to exchange their youth for your old age. So Marajayati goes home and he says to his eldest son Yadu, will you please give me this, give me your youth in exchange for this old age and invalidity. But Yadu, he was aware, he knew that Krishna was going to take birth in his dynasty, and he knew for a higher purpose he shouldn't accept this. Like before Kumara is rejecting Brahma's request to create progeny, in knowledge he rejects this offering of old age from his father Marajayati. So Marajayati asks his other three sons, Turvasu, Prayora and Anu, and they all in ignorance decline. It's the difference, because they think that they're happy and they think that their youth is going to last forever and they want to enjoy it themselves, so they don't. So then Marajayati asks his youngest of all his sons, Puru, Samishta's youngest son, Puru, and Puru very nobly agrees. He says, we're all born into this world with a debt we cannot repay to our parents, to our father especially. In this I can see this is a way of partially pleasing my father, plus repaying his debt a little bit. So he agrees. He becomes but not very nice of Marajayati to force old age. This is again an example of how lust blinds us. So Marajayati gets his youth back and he enjoys more sex life, more sense gratification. For more than 1,000 years, live a long time. More than 1,000 years of sense gratification. But then one day he becomes completely disgusted with this sex life, and he kind of starts to wake up a bit. He realizes, I've been doing this for more than 1,000 years, but I'm never satisfied. Still, I want more and more. I'm never going to be satisfied. It's just like when you have a fire, you add butter to that fire. It doesn't put it out, it just increases it. He says, Purnam Vasha Sahasram Me Vishayan Sevato Sakrit Tatapi Chana Savanam Trishna Teshu Pajayate. He says, I've spent the full 1,000 years enjoying sense gratification, yet my desire to enjoy such pleasure increases every day. And then he goes to his wife Devyani and narrates this very surreal story, where he more or less compares her to a goat. He says there is a person in this world, but his life is very similar to mine. He says there is a he-goat, and he was enjoying eating grass in the forest for his sense gratification. When he came upon a well and found a she-goat stuck in the well, with his horns he digs down and he frees this goat from the well. And upon finding this she-goat to be very attractive, and she finds him very attractive, with a nice moustache and a beard, and finds that he's very expert in discharging semen and performing sexual intercourse, the he-goat and the she-goat get married, and they live a long time enjoying sense gratification with each other. But then one day the she-goat sees the he-goat having sex with another she-goat, a different she-goat, and becomes incredibly angry. The she-goat goes back to her previous maintainer, who is a brahmana, and the he-goat follows her, trying to appease her to get her back. But when the brahmana finds out what has been happening, he cuts off the dangling testicles of the he-goat so that he cannot enjoy the sex life anymore. This he-goat is a bit upset, as you could imagine, because he was quite enjoying his sex sense gratification. So he begs the brahmana to restore his virility, which he does. And then he enjoys again with the she-goat for more than 1,000 years. But with his he-goat, he's still not satisfied. And eventually, he explains to the she-goat that he's forgotten, that we have both forgotten the real purpose of life, of self-realization. And this story Mahajayati tells Devayani as kind of like a joke, but she understands the deeper significance of this. And she gives up. They give up. They part, as in they don't see each other. Mahajayati goes to the forest, and Devayani attains perfection by surrender, by taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. So even after 1,000 years of sense gratification that Mahajayati was enjoying with so much facility that we can't even imagine, and then it's such a classic tale. He didn't get satisfied. Eventually, he gave up. So there's a lot we can learn from this story. That it's futile. There is no satisfaction to be had. Like, the problem which we were talking about earlier is when lust is unsatisfied, anger arises. Anger is coming from unfulfilled lust. But then if lust is satisfied, or is gratified, it's not satisfied, then we just become greedy for more. Like Mahajayati was so greedy that he was willing to give his youngest son his old age in exchange. Actually, at the end, when Mahajayati has given up his desire for sense gratification, he takes back the old age from his son Puru, and Puru becomes young again. And Puru, he actually gives his whole empire to Puru. He gives the 4 directions to his sons, Yadu, Turvasu, Prahu, and Anu, but he establishes Puru as the emperor-in-chief of all of them, even though he's younger, because of his noble act like this. As Narada Muni is describing, to deal with greed, I'm not going to talk so much about greed, but greed is like thorns and prickles, all kinds of thorns and prickles in this world. Like you go and prick them around Vrindavan. If you're not wearing any shoes, then you get a lot of prickles, a lot of in your feet. And Narada Muni is explaining that greed is like this, but he who wears the shoe of satisfaction is not affected by the thorns of greed. He's comparing this satisfaction to a shoe which we can put on, a cloak, protective cloak, that we can save ourselves from feeling greedy for more lust, even because lust can never be satisfied, then we become angry anyway, so we just give up the whole thing. There's this saying about contentment where man is saying how I was moaning about not having the best shoes until I saw a man with no feet. So you can understand them by seeing others who are in a much less fortunate situation than us, and we can feel very content with where we are on on the path with our progress, what we have in terms of facilities, and we can remain unaffected by the greed for more lust, because we have the right understanding that it can't be satisfied anyway, and then consequently we can avoid getting angry. Like Yamunacharya is saying that when he thinks of sex life, he spits at the thought. But there's lots we can learn from Yamunacharya. But the point is that the thought is there. Even Yamunacharya is thinking. And like Krishna is saying in this verse in the 11th canto, I think it's the 14th chapter, 18th verse, that my devotee may not have all his senses under control, and that's okay. What to speak of us, if Yamunacharya is having these thoughts, yeah, he's spitting at them. We may not be spitting, we may be relishing, but the thought is still there, so we can feel humble in this way, and can help us to respond in the right way. It's a lot about how we respond, not what's actually there. Like Subhag Swami once said to Srila Prabhupada that, will there one day be a day when lust will be completely gone from the heart? Prabhupada said, no. Subhag Swami feeling a bit oh my God, never going to happen. And then a few days later, he's a bit disturbed in his mind, so he asks Prabhupada again. He said, Prabhupada, will there one day be a day when lust will be completely gone from the heart? And this time Prabhupada says, Govinda Icha. If it's the will of Govinda, the Icha, the will of Govinda, then yes. So we can get hope from this, that by taking shelter of Krishna, if Krishna wants, he can get rid of these things. Like Indradyumna Swami was carrying a lot of bags in the airport one time, and him and Prabhupada, and he drops all these bags, all burst up and everything goes everywhere. Prabhupada with his stick stands there, with Indradyumna Swami is on his knees trying to put everything back into the bag. He says, so much trouble and so much struggle in the material world, but when I take you back to Godhead, Prabhupada will take us back. Krishna will make everything sublime. So much trouble and so much struggle in the material world, but when I take you back to Godhead, Krishna will make everything sublime. So, like Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. There's a purport. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. The purport is in the middle. Chant Hare Krishna, struggle and be happy. This is what we've come to realize, is quoted saying, chant Hare Krishna, struggle and be happy. So we go on struggling and taking shelter of the Lord, developing love for the Lord, getting the right understanding of these problems, where they're coming from, and tolerating them, struggling and tolerating, and we will get there. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any questions?
When you were talking about love, you said, what was the word that something must be done or is being done with love?
Oh, I'm not sure. Something condensing.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, condensed. You know what? Like condensed milk.
Yeah.
Or concentrate. You have orange juice, and then you have orange juice concentrate. You take a lot of oranges and you concentrate them, condense them into a small amount. It's very rich, like fine. So there is some love for Krishna, but we're trying to increase that. We're trying to condense it down, refine it, because there's love, but there's a lot of lust. So we're trying to get rid of the lust and condense it, so we get down to the pure love. We uncover and get through to the pure state.
Thank you.
One thing thing we can finish on maybe, which I found when looking about lust, is very beautiful sonnet by William Shakespeare, which is very deep realizations actually, is all we're talking about. The expense of spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action, and till action lust is perjured, murderous, bloody, full of blame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust, enjoyed no sooner but despised straight, past reason hunted, and no sooner had, past reason hated, as a swallowed bait, on purpose laid to make the taker mad, mad in pursuit and in possession, so had, having, and in quest to have, extreme, a bliss in proof, and proved a very woe. Before a joy proposed behind a dream, all this world well knows, yet none knows well, to shun this heaven that leads men to this hell. So you have to think about that one. A little bit cryptic.
Not for me. Can't get it.
Well, he's saying the expense of spirit is wasted in the shameful act of lust, in action, and until action lust. Not just doing the act, but everything that comes up to it, leading up to it. There's so much thinking about it and arrangements and all these things, problems that you have to, like Maharaj, to enjoy with Devyani, he had to work out how to get her out of this well first, like a deep well, big problem to get her out. He says, is perjured, murderous, bloody, and full of blame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, and not to trust. As soon as you've enjoyed it, it's despised. Enjoyed no sooner, but despised. You engage in this lustful act, you think, yeah, now I'm going to enjoy it. And then once you've done it, oh, why did I do that? It's so stupid. Despised. Past the reason hunted, and no sooner had, past reason hated. You're looking for a reason, like, oh, it's okay, I'll find a reason to make it, to explain away why I did it. But then as soon as it's done, you hate that, you hate the reason. I don't know, I'm making it up as I go along, really. Swallowed bait. On purpose laid to make the taker mad, mad in pursuit and in possession. So it's like this, lust blinds us. In the pursuit of lust, it blinds us, and then once we have it, we're completely blind. Had, having, and in quest to have, extreme. A bliss in proof, and proved a very woe. Before a joy proposed behind a dream. All this world well knows, yet none knows well, to shun this heaven that leads men to this hell. So all the world, they know it so well. They're all expert, practiced, PhD, diploma in lust, but they don't know. They well know, but none knows well. They don't know the real truth, that it's not going to bring us satisfaction. Only service to Krishna, having a relationship with Krishna, is what's really going to help. Because it's not heaven. It's to shun this heaven that leads men to this hell. This lust is not heaven. So like, if ignorance is bliss, then it is folly to be wise. The ignorance is not bliss, and it's not folly to be wise. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, thank you.